we are down to just 4 competitors, and we are going to follow UCG Neukkim through this top 4 journey as they go up against Ogre. And we're going to have this Dragon deck live and in action up against the first Draven Ezreal of the tournament that we've actually seen, SJW.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a lot of Draven Ezreal, and then there's also a Go Hard deck on the side of OGR that we might be able to see here in a little bit. But for now, like you mentioned, we're actually getting the Dragons and Draven Ezreal. So Dragons, I think we saw, what was it, one other competitor in the top cut that we actually had seen play the Dragons, and there's a lot of...
It's been getting banned a lot.
Yeah, it's been getting banned a lot, but I just like the Spring Guardian we've seen as a 1 of. It's actually a 2 of in this particular deck. We already see it hitting the field here as well. Very curious to see what that does in this matchup. I'm always just so iffy on that card, but yeah, I mean, this is it definitely doesn't feel like a terrible deck, but just it's so weird to just see it so heavily represented in Korea as opposed to NA, where Dragons are basically just non-existent.
Yeah, and it looks like we did get, I believe that is the Feel the Rush that was banned out of Neukkim, and OGR had their Mist Wraith deck banned. So I want to talk about the list a little bit here out of Ogre. So this Noxian Guillotine that we see in hand, obviously going to do a lot of work against these high health units, but we're only playing 1 copy of Thermogenic Beam, which is sort of our other answer. And, as good as this Guillotine is, I don't think it's going to be able to get maybe more than 2 kills before it runs out of gas, you don't have the mana for it, or some kind of, maybe a star shaping comes out on one of the units. I mean, you really don't have as many answers for big units as you do in some of these other versions.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to really string together the removal for it. I mean, we have obviously Ravenous Flock, 2 Ravenous Flock will kill most everything. Obviously not an Aurelian Soul, which we already see in hand, but I got to agree with you. I mean, this Noxian Guillotine is definitely going to be pretty heavily relied on, I think, in this matchup. But see, you're forgetting something.
What am I forgetting?
You're forgetting the 10 the 10 damage Tri-Beam Improbulator.
Oh, right, yeah.
That is also basically the same thing as Thermo Beam, I've heard.
For those of you that are new to myself and SJW, he's told me tales of him killing Nautiluses with Tri-Beam Improbulators, and I haven't seen it happen yet. I think the biggest one that I've seen was actually 8, and it did pull a Tiana Crown Guard. That was a delight to be able to cast, but actually, I want to go back to that previous turn. A little surprised not to see the single combat come out in response to the Arachnoid Sentry. Just get that kill on the Fiora. Your unit is getting damaged/stunned anyway. You know that a Ravenous Flock is probably coming. A little surprised to see the damage pushed onto the Spring Guardian rather than maybe proactively going for that. Or did the Ezreal come down? No, Ezreal already had to be on the field.
Well, we're getting another stun onto the Screeching Dragon as well. So this is actually representing a pretty decent attack here on the side of OGR. And this is one of the things you have to watch out for against Draven Ezreal is kind of this flooding of the board early on. I think that's probably the last turn that we're going to get a decent attack out of OGR. And I think OGR is going to have to pivot now to, dealing damage with spells and whatnot, and possibly, getting Ezreal down, getting something like a Captain Farron in hand. Unfortunately, OGR just has more units to throw to the field, and 2 of those being Sump Dredger. I don't know if that's really going to be enough here because Screeching Dragon's big. We might even get a Radiant Guardian that hits the field. We have another Screeching Dragon in hand, not to mention another single combat. It's going to be hard, I think, for OGR to really close this one out unless we draw Captain Farron.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really like Neukimm's chances, and with the way that the hand is lining up with this second Screeching Dragon, with this Eclipse Dragon, I think there's a very good chance that this Noxian Guillotine gets committed to the board before Aurelian Soul comes down, and then you have really no answer other than the second Guillotine left in your deck to deal with that unit. Yeah, this Guillotine only going to get to kill 1 unit because there's nothing left in OGR's hand that's going to soften up other units. It would, you would have to do it in combat. Though I will say I am surprised to see it come out like this. It does imply that we want to discard the fleeting copy, but we could just do that next turn, go in for an open attack, damage some of these units, unless this is just paying a lot of respect to the Radiant Guardian, which is possible. There are 3 copies in these Dragon lists.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see. Okay, I was going to say if Neukkim plays a single combat or not there, and how much Neukkim is worried about taking damage next turn. And wow, okay, so we still don't have a Radiant Guardian down. There's a window here where OGR can just take this game without Farron, but it needs to be like now or never. Like we need to open attack, deal as much damage as possible, which is looking like it's going to be, was at 6 damage. and we have 3 more in hand. We're 2 shy right now. It's going to be really close for OGR to pull this game off like in the next turn or two. But that's it. I mean, if we don't pull it off in the next turn or two, we're resorting to, again, just drawing Captain Farron. If we don't draw Farron like in the next 3 or 4 turns, I don't think OGR pulls this home. Radiant Guardian's just going to hit the board and put it out of reach.
All right, so we're going for the single combat. Now, I'm curious if this is going to get the spring gifts onto the Screeching Dragon. I imagine it would, and that is basically going to take us off the Radiant Guardian for the next turn, but I don't really mind it. I mean, you're not, like, feeling particularly pressed to get this Radiant Guardian down. You are only having 4 damage thrown at you on the following turn. You have a 3-2 that you can get down and just play the Radiant Guardian post-combat, you know, go in for an open with it and feel pretty hunky-dory about the way that everything is sort of played out for you.
I mean, hey, all right, I'm sold on Spring Guardian. That seemed like a pretty good use of it there. I mean, Screeching Dragon, probably one of the better targets outside of a tough unit like Radiant Guardian to heal up to full. And we saw great use of it there. So it's going to go ahead and save us a little bit of health, a little bit of life here. We're still taking that 6 that I had initially mentioned, but this is going to be unfortunate for OGR because this is the inevitable Radiant Guardian finally coming down. You cannot play around Radiant Guardian forever. And now the lifesteal is going to start to hit the board. So the next question is going to be, can we play around this lifesteal? And does Neukkim draw some more combat tricks like single combat or concerted strike to really just exacerbate this lifesteal problem that we have on the board now?
I mean, there is still the possibility that OGR can actually rummage their way into a Mystic Shot or another copy of Get Excited and just end the game right here because there's no single combat. There's no concerted strike on the side of Neukkim. This Radiant Guardian has to connect, and OGR needs to see the window. Gets a draw. There's the lethal.
Went for it and got it. Oh, my God.
Yeah, gonna have exact lethal on the side of OGR. I mean, this is the problem with the Radiant Guardian coming down so late and really just using that single combat before that unit was on the board. I think that there were spaces where Neukkim could have forced this unit, but just felt like they were in a safe spot, and it is not the case. OGR gonna pick up game number 1.
I love how OGR handled this game. This is somebody knowing this deck's strengths and weaknesses. OGR knows that this deck is not going to win later in the game versus something like this Dragon deck. And this is the point. This is the turn. This is the turning point. If we don't take it here, we lose. Obviously, there could be a concerted strike or a single combat, which would blow this out of the water, and OGR won't be able to take it. But we don't have it, and OGR wouldn't have played around it anyways. He couldn't. He knew he needed to win the game now, and OGR taking game number 1. That's right. Wait, did we just wait?
Okay, so we're getting in a little bit late on this one, it seems. It is going to be the Mist Wraiths up against the Go Hard deck of OGR. And I mean, this is just another super polarizing matchup for the Mist Wraith deck. This should be a pretty quick series tie-up for Neukkim, and that looks to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, getting in late here, we can see that it is already a very large board developed by Neukkim. And, you know, we saw this earlier in another match where Fearsome's, they're just a polarizing deck in general, right? Like, there are some decks that just deal with Fearsomes great. And then there's other decks that just really don't have any answers. Something like this Go Hard deck, it generally doesn't have any fearsome blockers. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Jagged Butcher is even considered in the deck. I will say, I think I've seen this before. There's 3 Arachnoid Horrors in OGR's Go Hard.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that one myself. One thing that I did want to mention here is based on the way that the mana has lined up, Zap Sprayfin came down this turn. You already had the Keg out. There was a Mist Wraith and an Arachnoid Horror on your opponent's side of the field. I would have probably gone for the red card on that.
Yeah, this seems like a juicy red card. I mean, are we just trying to greed? I mean, maybe I could understand trying to greed.
Oh, another development, and this should be really big for OGR.
That is, look at that. That is a snap red card decision there. And I think OGR greeted there and got rewarded, which I don't hate. Again, we saw OGR play to the strengths and weaknesses of that Draven Ezreal deck, and I like this decision, probably thinking, listen, the only way I do win this game is by greeting, right? We need to clear as much as possible with something like a kegged up red card. Now, we can save one of these with Pale Cascade.
Yeah,
or we just don't have any more development after that.
We could Pale Cascade, or we could get down the Skitterer, and I like the Skitterer line a decent amount because I'm not seeing an answer on the side of OGR for the Harrowing on the next attack turn of Neukkim.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is always up for discussion every time we see this fearsome deck, and it's always where are the skitterers? Are they in the death pool? How many are we going to get back if we play a harrowing? Because that's the difference of a 3-attack board going to a 2-attack, or a 4-attack board if there's 2 skitterers going to a 2-attack board. So pretty crucial there. And we are going to get the Chronicler, though, which I love Chronicler in this deck. I love Chronicler, how it's popping up as like one of and two ofs in a lot of decks now. It's a very combo heavy oriented card.
I know that Flicker is a mechanic that a lot of players like from a lot of different card games, and Chronicler is really the only one that we have in Legends of Runeterra. I'm hoping it doesn't become like an archetype in of itself, especially because they've shown that if it is going to pop up, it's going to be a Shadow Isle type of mechanic, and just sort of based on the color wheels here, comparing it to MTG a little bit. Flicker is usually like a white and blue mechanic, and I tend to think of Shadow Isle as black. So
I was just
putting Flicker in black seems pretty scary to me. But I mean, it's a little, it's a lot different because you can always build 2 color decks. You have perfect mana, so to speak. But okay, so actually going to block with the Wraithcaller rather than get the Skitterer in the death pool to go for the Harrowing and take this Chronicler off the table as a blocker.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious to see if we are actually going for Harrowing next turn. I mean, we're going to have exactly 9 mana. So I wonder if that's just an oversight by Neukkim, maybe?
It is a little curious because we have the double Stalking Shadows, but if we start off the turn with the Stalking Shadows to see what we find, we're not going to have the Harrowing available. And I want to say that the kill onto the Mist Wraith guarantees a Harrowing this turn.
Yeah, there's really nothing. There's no other good ways to develop. And yeah, you have another Harrowing. I think you're A-okay. You're not worried about something like denying a matchup like this. You're A-okay to just jam it.
They're covering the spell mana. I don't know if Ruination's online. We see the 7 mana, but no spell mana.
Wow. Yeah, and we're actually going to dig now. Maybe I'm trying to say, is there Crumble? There's no Crumble. There's Withering Wail is probably what we're trying to find here. And
actually, gonna get
levels. Okay.
Yeah, the TF level is not going to mean that much, though. With 5 mana, there's no way that you can actually get down enough cards to get to gold.
Yeah, you actually only have Go Hard, and then you could play your pick a card, and that's going to give you'll kill 1 unit, essentially, between the two.
And, I mean, so we do have 2 Wraithcallers that popped out, so, not quite lethal damage being presented here, I don't think. I gotta math it out real quick here. 7. I mean, we have 2 fearsome blockers.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I think we're forgetting there are actually fearsome blockers on the field, which doesn't happen often, mainly because it's a level Twisted Fate, which you usually don't want to block with, right? And then you have Chronicler, which honestly, I forget that thing has 3 attacks sometimes. So yeah, I mean, it's just got such a powerful effect. I'm like, oh wow, by the way, it's a fearsome blocker. So yeah, we are actually going to go with the Betty Croaker, just trying to dig for some other options. We still do have the red card online if we want to do it, but again, the red card not really going to do a whole lot to prevent any incoming damage here. And you got to think we want to save the TF, right? No,
I mean,
right?
You would like to, but I don't think you actually realistically get to do that. I was a little surprised to see the, this Betty Croaker coming down rather than the Go Hard to get a little bit of life back, set us up for Pack Your Bags, because we did see 2 Go Hards played on the previous turn. I mean, Pack would almost certainly be lethal in combination with this Ladros, but I mean, Neukkim, he's got these Mist Wraiths up to 8 attack and has the Atrocity in hand.
So he wanted to get the extra lifesteal
I see,
here. Yeah, drain. So I actually really like this with the drain.
Okay, just going to discard the Go Hard.
Can somebody explain that?
I can't. That seemed really sort of cut and dry to me, that was the line that we go for.
Is there a chance that maybe he pulled it to the middle and then clicked OK, thinking it was locked in and it wasn't?
It's not out of the question, and I do want to mention that Neukkim just whiffed Stalking Shadows.
That feels so bad every time. Every time. You got so many targets, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal here, though. I mean, there's another Stalking Shadows, plus you have Harrowing. So I don't think if you hit that, it's going to really make too big of a difference. Maybe Doom Beast would have made a difference, possibly, but we are going to get the second Twisted Fate hitting the board still, and we still don't really have a way to get to gold card, like you mentioned before. There's just not a whole lot of reactive spells that we have in hand just yet.
Yep, we did find our own Arachnoid Horror, though, so I'm not going to lie. When I was going over the deck list, I was 90% sure that was Arachnoid Horror. I put it on the deck list sheet, And I wasn't totally sure, so it is nice to see it and get confirmed that, yeah, OGR is playing Arachnoid Horror in this deck, and I gotta say, I kind of like it. It's a pretty cheap fearsome blocker from Shadow Isle, as well as just a nice little hedge card for the mirror, where you get to put the gas on a little bit early against your opponent and really start to win those earlier trades.
Yeah, I've seen it before. Like, this is not the first time I've seen Arachnoid Horror in the decks, but yeah, I 100% agree with you, because in a lot of matchups, not even just the mirror, but just a lot of matchups in general, you can sometimes beat down the opponent really early with a lot of these small units. You know, we've said a million times, Zap Sprayfin's 2 attack is actually a lot when everything comes down to it. So having a 3/2 fearsome attacker as well seems really powerful. And then, you know, obviously it's a blocker.
So it looks like Neukkim's going to go for, I would imagine, a kill onto the Twisted Fate here. And that puts him at 1, if that's the case. It's going to be 3 damage off the red card and then 6 coming in from the remaining units. And this is scary, too, because if there's a Glimpse Beyond or something, or any playable card in OGR's hand, that would have represented the gold card to kill that Arachnoid or Frenzied Skitterer, sorry, and it would have just been lethal. Now going to fall down to 1, and I don't think they can come back into this unless they very specifically Stalking Shadows into Doom Beast, because that Ladros on the first priority sequence is going to be lethal. But there's the Doom Beast off the top, but we get baited by the Harrowing.
Oh, no.
What?
Wait, what?
What was that?
Wait, what?
Oh, we're vengeancing to set up for our own Doom Beast, rather than going for the Ladros. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. OGR still is lethal.
Oh, all right. Wow. Talk about a completely different mindset than what we were expecting. That I thought we just like threw that game there.
I thought the Ladros was going to be it, but no, goes to the style points, grabs the Doom Beast, and that is going to be OGR moving on to the finals, your first finalist of the Asia Seasonal Tournament.